Coming to you still from the Eswatini International Trade Fair, the 56th one that is. They had to do it right a 56th time. We are still enjoying the festivities of the trade fair, you know, speaking to exhibitors and of course gaining knowledge from everything that is happening around the trading and the businesses and what they have to offer. Solos kulmisa inzaba ye content and technology, and right now the rightful people to give you information in regards to indigenous knowledge and its innovation and how you can learn about it at home. Joining me is of course Dr. Kuku Sibanze from UNISWA under the Department of Indigenous Knowledge, and also representing the ministry is another Kuku, but she's joining us as Kuku Nkambule, sorry, that is. But ngicela sikhulumise nje indzaba yema systems here in the government of Eswatini. I'll start with you, Kuku Nkambule. How is the government strengthening the systems when it comes to innovation and making sure ukuthi simaswati siyayibona intuthuko in the government?
Sibonge sivusele nembukeli ekhaya. Litiko la ICT lisemkhankasweni lomkhulu wekuthi lisebenzise innovation ihambisana nescience kanye netebuchwepheshe kwakuthi livela kangwane nalo lithuthuke kutemnotho. In accordance with the National Development Plan, sibukile lokho ukuthi asisuke silivela kangwane ku resource knowledge, ku resource economy, siye ku knowledge based economy. Lokusho kuthini ke lapho? Lokusho ukuthi asebenzise lwati lwethu noma bunjula buchopho bethu sibuthengise, sakhe ama products ngabo sibuthengise. Dinenge tinhlelo letikhona eMinistry letingaphansi kwe-Department yaka Research Technology and Innovation. Lolunye hlelo nje lolikhona losoluthinzile ngileli la indigenous knowledge. Indigenous knowledge ngilapho ukhanza ukuthi sisebenzisa le njula buchopho yethu bungithi bethu singemaswati lwati lwethu lesilatiko lwenzabuko sakhe mhlawumbe ema solutions nema remedies thite ngiyabekisa lemakhaya sikhone ukuthi sitelaphe sithi ke asilithathe lolwati lolo silu ole kahle sisebenzisa yona le indigenous knowledge policy le sisemkhankasweni wekuyakha ukuthi sikhone ukuthi nathi sihambisane nemave emhlaba sikhone ukuthuthukisa umnotho welive la kangwane sisebenzisa yona le indigenous knowledge.
Okay, and Dogotela, I think you will correct me if I'm wrong. When you speak about indigenous knowledge, sikhulumisa lwati lwemzabu, you know, it's something that comes from mostly in the Kingdom of Eswatini, we can say our rural backgrounds, things that we learned in the past. But, you know, umhlaba uyakhula, and the AIs that we're speaking about, there's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of advancement. How is Eswatini working on preserving the indigenous knowledge in terms of the future of the world? How is it matching the global standards in terms of innovation?
Okay, thank you very much, and a good afternoon to the viewers. I think maybe just to answer what the question that you've asked, Gugu has just alluded to the IKS policy that is being developed by the ministry, and I think it's one of the vehicles that we as a country have adopted for us to protect our indigenous knowledge. I think one of the objectives of the policy is to preserve the indigenous knowledge, but also to be able to use it sustainably for our economic development as a country. So it's one of the vehicles, and I think as a country we are coming in when the global population has done quite a lot. There is one protocol that the country is party to, the Nagoya Protocol on Access and Benefit Sharing, that speaks to how we access indigenous knowledge and the resources that are associated, and then how we use them, and the people who own that knowledge benefit from that system. So as a country, we are already party to that protocol, and as we are developing our indigenous knowledge policy in the country, we are alive to the protocols that we are and the conventions that the country is party to. So this is one of them, and I think it's one thing that we want to applaud the Minister of ICT for actually working on, because Maswati, particularly Bandla Batzala, one of the things that they have always been afraid of when it comes to sharing indigenous knowledge, I think it's quite a tricky thing, because you have to share for it to be preserved. Now, but with sharing comes risks.
Yes.
of your knowledge being misappropriated. So I think the policy is trying to address those risks that are there. Bantu labadala ukhanzethi noma bangasikhuluma bafune kusitshela lo lwati basaba ngoba basethembi. We have not behaved very well, particularly our scientists in the past and researchers, where we have gone to communities, harvested the knowledge, used it, maybe benefited from it, even monetary, but they have not had any benefit. So I think it's one of those vehicles that the ministry is using to help us, particularly also us as researchers, because, and then there are all these protocols and that the country is party to that sometimes could be a hindrance for research if you do not have the appropriate policies in-house. So I think this is going to be enabling for us, particularly us who are players in the indigenous knowledge space. Yeah.
I love that you speak about the significance of having the indigenous knowledge policy, but also over to you, Kuku. We're asking about the strategies that the government is putting into place in engaging eMaswati on indigenous knowledge. Because lomunye ngabuka bo indigenous knowledge, acabanga ukuthi indvo lekhashane ne science and technology. But how are you guys then pairing this thing up and, you know, teaching eMaswati ukuthi they can work together for good?
Thank you. The Ministry of ICT currently is engaged in a mapping exercise where si vakashela the communities or the individuals that are, I would say, indigenous IK owners.
Yes.
Labanalo lwati. Kuba ukuthi ngabe vele bakuphi natinhlangano lebangasebenzisana nato kuze sitowukhona kokuthi sithi singabuka kokuthi okay lwati lolikhona lapha kaNgwane ngilolunje. Mhlawumbe sesingabuka ukuthi siqala ngakuphi kusebenta si preserve lokho lesikutholako lapha phasi egroundini sisa harvest or whatever information that we are getting. Kumcoka kakhulu ke ukuthi sati ukuthi bantu vele live la kaNgwane linaliphi indigenous knowledge nekokuthi ngikuphi la singa leverage khona ukuthi sikhone mhlawumbe kuku package sikhone ukukuthengisa. Live la kaNgwane ke lesikubonile ngaphambilini ukuthi bowukhanza ukuthi people would come here, maybe kube ne intellectual property lay khona la ka indigenous knowledge bayebe inga benefit live sithi ke nyalo, let us harmonize that and have systems latawugatsa ukuthi such knowledge is not lost but it is shared with the world beneficially for the person maybe who's going to add it to be of high value and the owner of the indigenous knowledge. Ngaleyo ndlela we're going to be probably moving faster towards realizing liphupho lokuthi sibe more innovative in all spheres, including even indigenous knowledge. Going back in time, we have had gokuthi kunema solutions. Bantu labadzala vele bebawasebenzisa, but we have not taken the steps and the systems gokuthi siku-protecte logo ukhanze gokuthi sesiyakusebenzisa ku-protected, no one is going to come here and steal it. Ngibekise futhi maybe noma ngabe uyeta uyi-researcher, you're outside the country or you're in country.
Yes.
Sekune National Research Council lelibandla leli is going to safeguard and guide gokuthi i-research now uyenda kanjani ungakhanzi usisoweba i-data mhlawumbe lebe itasita thine lisilive ka indigenous knowledge.
And umbuto lomqwa kakhulu, I think, is what are some of the activities that are being done by the government to move us eMaswati from resource based to knowledge based? And nje ngicela usichazele kabanti ukuthi yini le resource based because omunye yatibuta bese yini ke le knowledge based.
Okay. I would just say briefly, bowati gokuthi nasakhe ama products lakhaya ukhanza gokuthi siwa khokha ngaphandle kwelive angahlutwa, let me put it like that. Nangabe ngithengisa amatamatisi ngiwathengisa njalo, nangabe ngithengisa mineral ngihambisa injalo. Kanzi nangabe nyalo sesithi sika knowledge base ngeta lwati tsite phela loltawenda gokuthi le product yakho ibe ne value addition. Ngibekise gokuthi ngine intellectual property yami again.
Yes.
Ngiyathi ukuthi oh okay nangibhica loku naloku kutawuphuma spice lesi noma isource lemnanjana
Yes.
letawehluka kulamanye sengingedile ke lapho lo pelepela ngawuthengisa unjalo lo tamatisi angalithengisa linjalo lapho sesithengisa le knowledge ngokuthi lokhu mhlambe sengitakuprotecta ngiyakubekisa ukuthi sengidawuthi nje igugu spices
Yes.
itawuthengiswa live umhlaba wonke ibe nale secret ingredients just like maybe to mention bo KFC awuyadi I secret ingredient yabo but bathengisa inkukhu bayiphithanisile nathi asebenzise mhlawumbe tihlahla tethu singathi nje umfo akafika athathe emaganu awathengisa nje omanjalo asikhona nathi sibe innovative sakhe ama products out of it using the knowledge that we have that is indigenous to us as eMaswati.
Jay, can I hand it over to you, Dokotela? Lana sikhulumisa a merge basically between science and technology and of course indigenous knowledge. Ngicela nje sikhulumise bumcoka about this union that you guys have created in preserving, you know, indigenous knowledge, implying rights for the people to maybe their intellectual properties to be to be protected. How is it important for you guys to merge and make this a success? Because nasati indigenous knowledge is technology, as I have already mentioned, the importance of this merging.
Okay, thank you again. Ngicabanga ukuthi maybe what I want to maybe emphasize is that knowledge is knowledge.
Yes.
So it could be scientific knowledge, and in this case, we are speaking to indigenous knowledge.
Yeah.
So kahle kahle lwati nje,
Yes.
basically. And products come from knowledge. And so your vehicle could be from indigenous knowledge or could be from scientific knowledge or other
Yes.
knowledge systems that exist in the world. So what we are trying to do is to have to use our indigenous knowledge. I think it's our competitive advantage as a Maswat. Because what I know, Botswana might not know, and other nationalities might not know, and they might not be using. So what we are trying to do is to use our indigenous knowledge, because that's ours, ngeMaswati logo, and kwatiwa ngetsitsine sodva. So use that to innovate, because even from science you can innovate. And I think one of the things that I always like to think about is the technology kwakhe mahewu.
Yes.
It's a technology, you realize.
It's a science as well.
It's
Yes,
it's
of
a
course.
technology because it's a
technology.
fermentation technology.
Of course.
But that's indigenous, eh? We
Yes.
have always used that. And
Yeah.
somehow now when we think innovative technologies, we think it's something different. It's just making products and bringing solutions
Yeah.
from your knowledge and how to use the materials that are at your disposal. So nkansi singeMaswati kufuna ke bese sesinase sifike lapho sathi sangabukile knowledge lenye sabuka sayihlukanisa tigaba. Then we can reach the stage where we know that all knowledge can be used for technological advancement. Either it's indigenous or it's your scientific or any other knowledge systems. So I think for us here that if we get that right, then
Yeah.
singeMaswati we're going to be able to take from all the knowledge systems that we have,
Yes.
and we are going to be developing products. And in this case, we are trying to just promote that don't leave indigenous knowledge behind, but can we also take it along as we create products? And I think I've gone around the exhibitions,
Yeah.
and I've seen a lot of Maswati innovating around the space using their indigenous plants, using their indigenous foods. So there's quite a lot of innovation, and I think that's what the government is trying to say we know how to use these things, and sometimes that knowledge is exclusive for us as a Maswati, but how can we leverage that for
Yes.
economic benefit? So I think that is where we are at.
But just lastly, as we wrap up, because we have unfortunately run out of time, ngicela kubuta ukuthi because sise trade fair lana, nitfolakala ngakuphi, because lwati aligcini la. Maybe we didn't unpack, everything that people need to know, especially with the Ministry of ICT. You know, there's so much underneath that umbrella. Bantu bangantfola ngakuphi to gain more knowledge about the ministry and of course, indigenous knowledge.
Siyabonga. The Ministry of ICT ikanegise ku hall number 2, where we are ready to assist whoever is interested in knowing more about indigenous knowledge and probably how to protect it or even use it to benefit themselves and the country at large. And then Le Royal Science and Technology Park, which is the parastatal that is responsible especially for letinzabatabo innovation. Itholakala ku Hall 1. Under that institution, kune department le bukenje i-biotechnology park. Lapho ke sithi emaswati awete ato buka kokuthi ama products awo angawenda kanjani kokuthi awasebenzise lawa la indigenous as well. Lolwati lwabo kwakha ema products latawathengisa.
Okay. A big thank you to you, Dr. Eswatini, for joining us, and of course, Ms. Gugu and Kambule for joining us and speaking on the idea of indigenous knowledge and, of course, innovation and how it relates to science and technology. But we do have to take a short break. We are still live from the trade fair, but when we come back, it will be time to wrap up. Stay with us.
Do you pay your TV license and are up to date with your payments? If not, here is your chance.